All right, so we ended last time on what I'm going to ask you to do this first week, and we talked a little bit about layers and some selection tools. So this one I wanted to just cover briefly just a little bit more what you can do with selection tools. Okay, so let me go ahead and turn off my layers. Now when I turn off my layers, they're still there, I just can't interact with them. Okay, so if I have a layer selected, and I try and use a brush or something on it, and you notice that it's turned off, the eyeball's off. See how I get the Ghostbuster symbol? And if I click on it, it says you can't use it because the layer's hidden. Okay, so that's a good way to protect stuff. Okay, there are other ways to protect we'll get into later. But if you're not currently editing the layer, it's a good idea to go ahead and turn it off. Okay, just so you don't end up painting on layers you don't intend to. So I'm going to make a new layer. Okay, and I'm going to use my lasso tools on this one, so I'm just call lasso. Okay, your lasso tools are another way to make selections. So you have your rectangular marquee tool, your elliptical marquee tool. Right immediately underneath that, you have your lasso tool, your polygonal lasso tool, and your magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool is a piece of garbage. It sucks. We are not going to use it. There are way better ways. The magnetic lasso tool, Photoshop's been out since like, I don't remember, 90, oh, now I'm going to feel bad because I'll look it up in 92, something like that. I think it was even earlier. I've been using it since like 1997, roughly. The magnetic lasso tool used to be the only way you could make selections and have it kind of grab to the edge of something you're trying to select. We have way better things than that now. Okay. So your standard lasso tool allows you to make a freeform selection. Right? So if I do this, it's going to select. Okay. So I can make irregular shapes. Click outside. Now you'll notice if I do something like loop, okay, it assumes that you want to fill in those sections. Okay. Now here's the interesting thing about selection tools. You can add to and subtract from selections. So let's go ahead and make, like, let's be cliche and make a heart. Oh, that's awful. Let me do that again. I'm trying to do this with a mouse. Make a heart shape. Okay. If I want to make a hole in my heart, Alt subtracts from your selections, Shift will add. Okay. So if I hold down Alt and I draw a hole in my heart, okay, I have now, here I'll grab my brush, right, you see how now I can paint, and it won't paint in that section. If I deselect, right, there's my object. By the way, another way to step back, I didn't talk about this. There's a lot of things that as I go, I'll kind of remember, because there's so many things you can do in Photoshop. Command Z or Control Z steps back. Okay, it used to be Control Z in Photoshop would step back, and then if you hit it again, it would step forward. They've now changed it to be consistent across the Adobe applications. So Command or Control Z will step back as many times as you have steps in your history. Okay. All right. So anytime I grab a selection tool, right, again, you'll notice up at the top it gives you your options. So if you see here, I currently, my option for this is new, select new. If I hover over top of, I can add to my selection, right? And you see how there's a little plus sign underneath my lasso? That means if I do this, okay, it adds to my selection. The next option is to subtract from, okay? So I want to get rid of this lump I just put on, okay? And the last one is intersect. And that means, here, I'll show you. So if I draw right here, it only selects where those two selections intersected. Okay. Now I will say, here's why I don't like to use these up here, because they stick. So if I do this, right, and I move on to some other tools, the next time I come back, it's still here. So if I want to make a new selection, and I come back and I go, okay, oh, can't select because it's set to intersect. Okay. So I usually stick to new, leave it up here, and I use keyboard shortcuts, the Alt to subtract from, okay, so draw a shape, Alt subtract from, Shift add to. Okay, so with these you can make some interesting shapes. That kind of looks like a fish, actually. Here, if we do this. Here, we'll give some flippers. All right, there we go. And here I can draw some teeth and add them in. Okay. There we go. Now I've made myself kind of a weird fish, and I can move it around. All right. So with those selection tools, the other one here underneath Lasso is Polygonal Lasso. Okay. Let me show you how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and step back, deselect. Polygonal Lasso does not work by clicking and dragging. Polygonal Lasso works by clicking and then letting go, and it makes straight lines. All right, so if you've used the other selection tools, the first time you use this, sometimes it gets confusing. Click, you set a point, right? I can drag it anywhere. If I hold down Shift, it will constrain it to 45-degree angles. Okay. All right, now with Polygonal Lasso, you'll notice once I hover over top of where I started, there's a little circle on the bottom right. That means it will go ahead and close the selection. Okay. I can also do that if I'm away from it by double-clicking, and it will automatically do a straight line to wherever that is. Okay. Now, if I want to make two selections that are separate from each other, that's fine as well. I just hold down Shift. Okay. Okay. And now, if I hit Shift Delete and fill with my foreground color, okay, it's going to fill both shapes. Okay. And when I move them, you'll notice they're on the same layer, so they're going to move together. If I wanted to move these separately, what I would have to do now is select what's on my layer. Here's where the Polygonal Lasso comes in handy. Switch to my Move tool, and you see how now there is a pair of scissors? That means I am now going to move this separately. Okay? And I can move it separately. You see the marching ants around it until I deselect. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Command D to deselect. And now when I move it again, they're both together because they're both together on the same layer. So again, this first week here in Photoshop, I want you just to play with these basic tools. I think the best way to learn is by messing around with it. Okay, if you're running any problems or have any questions, by all means, please contact me. Otherwise, there's a quiz. And I will write this also in the Blackboard course. I'm going to want you to go ahead and make me something, minimum of 4 layers, using your selection tools, fill, and your brush tool. Okay. Now I will say with your brush, last thing here, you also have an eraser tool. Okay. And again, it has multiple options. You want to make sure you're on your eraser tool, not your background or magic eraser tool. We'll cover those later. That's good. I speak English. Okay. With your eraser tool, it also works with your brushes. Okay, so I'm going to pick a hard round. I want to make sure my opacity is at 100%. Right now, if I click, okay, I can delete out information, or I can click and drag. Okay, and with my brush, I can come in and paint again. Okay, and use my eraser. All right, so between all of those tools, you should be able to make me something really, really interesting. I don't care what it is. As long as it meets the standards of the school. I prefer not to get paintings of genitalia if that's okay by you. So, but feel free to do landscape, portrait. You can make something completely abstract. Okay, I just want you to play a little bit. You are not restricted to only using these tools, but you're required to use at minimum, right, your elliptical marquee, your regular marquee, which is going to be your rectangular, your polygonal lasso, your regular lasso, and a brush, paint bucket tool, and like I said, a minimum of 4 layers named. Okay, make sure they're named, and then save the document. So go to File, and you want to hit Save As. Make sure it's saved as a Photoshop document. Okay, that's the only way it'll support layers, and then go ahead and submit that. Okay, and I'll open up where you can submit for your weekly participation. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.